Let's cut to the chase, have an honest conversation, and develop real answers. As a matter of fact, with Andrew Cuomo. Welcome back to As a Matter of Fact. I'm Andrew Cuomo. As usual, there is a lot going on, especially in the political world. And we've gotten a lot of questions, which I think cover the gamut. So let's answer some questions today. First one. Recently, Donald Trump criticized Ron DeSantis' handling of COVID and said that your handling of COVID was better. Governor DeSantis responded by saying that he had less excess deaths than New York and blamed lockdowns for New York's death toll. He added that Trump should have fired Fauci. I'd like to know your thoughts on all of this. Good question. Sadly, there is actually a lot that we should learn from COVID that we have not learned. This nation was wholly unprepared to deal with COVID. And that is not just a criticism of President Trump. In truth, there were many things that should have been done before President Trump ever got to office. There should have been regional stockpiles of medications. There should have been regional stockpiles of respirators, of masks. There should have been more emergency personnel who were ready and who were trained. We should have had more testing capacity in this country and known where the testing capacity was and what the limits were. We do not really have an emergency medical response system in this country. Think about it. We developed a great emergency response system for natural disasters. If there's a hurricane, a flood, et cetera, there's now a whole apparatus that is in place. I was part of that in the federal government. And that, frankly, is a relatively recent innovation because of the increase, because of global warmings, and we have more weather-related crises. So we developed that response capacity. That response capacity does not exist in public health. And what we should have done was gone back and looked at COVID and developed a public health response that would be ready for the next time. And by the way, there will be a next time. You can count on that. And we should have seen this time coming. Zika, Ebola, dengue, right? Every few years, there was a new viral outbreak. And that will continue. So there should have been, and there still could be, a real substantive review, and let's really establish a public health emergency management system. That's not what has happened. COVID has become a political game. COVID was used politically by Donald Trump first because it was in the middle of his presidential campaign. And Trump was doing everything he could to distance himself from COVID and to blame someone else, right? Politics, the blame game. During his presidential convention, Trump literally blamed the Democratic governors for the COVID deaths. Most of the COVID deaths happened in nursing homes with older people. And he blamed Democratic governors for the nursing home deaths. And he named 5 or 6 Democratic states. New York was one of them, and the governors. And the Department of Justice started a federal investigation against those Democratic states for nursing home deaths. It was clearly politics, and to affirm Trump's claim that this is all about the Democratic governors, he starts a federal investigation, Department of Justice. So he can say, and the federal government is investigating to affirm his political point, which in and of itself is frightening. Using the federal justice system as a political tool is frightening. Unfortunately, it happens all too often. Unfortunately, Americans now believe the whole justice system is political. And when you believe the justice system is political, you've really lost faith in government. But that was Trump's whole MO. I was doing morning briefings every morning because I wanted to provide a sense of stability for people during COVID and give people information during COVID. I think the president saw that as a threat. He singled out New York for attack and me. New York, just because he's always had an antagonism towards New York. And me, because I was a leading voice on COVID during that time. So that was his first position. Now, turn the page, because it's a different political day. So now Trump says, Cuomo did a better job than DeSantis. What? I've heard about doing a 180, but you go from the Democratic governors caused COVID. Cuomo caused nursing home deaths, which the conservatives love, this theory of deaths in nursing homes because of something the state government did that shouldn't have been done. I had one conservative say to me, you should have put people with COVID in Central Park if you didn't have enough hospital beds. How do you create a hospital in the middle of Central Park, right? Hospital has to be a sterile environment, equipment, et cetera. Anyway, that was chapter one. New York did a terrible job. Governor's under investigation. But now the politics has shifted for Mr. Trump, who's running against Mr. DeSantis. And now Mr. Trump says, Cuomo did a better job than DeSantis, who Trump had said had done a great job under COVID. Total 180, because they're not sincere about any of it. They're using COVID as a political ploy, period. I'm very proud of the way New York handled it. I'm proud of the way New Yorkers handled it. I'm proud of the way my administration handled it. And to play politics with this is despicable, because people lost loved ones. And that's very painful. And they know that that emotion is there. That's why they use it politically, because emotion is a powerful political tool. Hate is a powerful political tool. Trump is a master at the use of hate. And he used that during COVID. You are upset that your loved one died? Your loved one didn't have to die. They only died because of government mismanagement, the bureaucracy. That's what Trump did, and that's what was despicable. So now, different day, different political environment. Cuomo did a better job than DeSantis. What DeSantis did, which I disagree with to this day, DeSantis was the conservatives' hero during COVID because he didn't want to do lockdowns. He didn't want to shut anything down. He didn't want to close schools. He didn't want to close anything, right? It was that rabid conservative mantra: government cannot control me. Government cannot control society. Government must be limited. Small government. We're afraid of powerful government. he is that rabid conservative. So government will not tell me if my business can be open. Government will not tell me I have to wear a mask. Government has no right to tell me I have to wear a mask or how to act or distance. So he kept everything open. What the numbers do say, and the numbers now say everything, by the way, because there was never a standard measure of counting. So different states counted different ways, different periods. But one thing we do know from the numbers, because it's clear, Florida had a very large second spike, right? Because the governor opened everything up. Didn't believe in vaccines, didn't believe in social distancing, didn't believe in masks. Go out and live your life. Yay, Florida. Conservatives say, go DeSantis. No government control here. And the number went up because the virus spread, which was obvious. You want to talk about obvious and preventable? You want to talk about that? Wear a mask, social distance, obvious and preventable. They made a political statement in Florida, the conservatives. We're not going to be told what to do. And the number went up. But Trump's criticism of me in New York and the federal investigation, where, by the way, they spent millions of federal tax dollars. And you know what the federal investigation found? Nothing. Nothing. Why don't the hypocritical conservatives, why aren't they so offended at the waste of government money on these political investigations that were clearly political and were only intended to generate headlines, but yet cost taxpayers millions of dollars? Where's that conservative outrage at the waste of government funds? It's not a waste when they spend your money to do investigations for political purposes. That's not a waste because they're advancing the conservative cause. But that Chapter 1 position was wholly political and false. And when Trump now says, I did a better job than DeSantis, and I believe New Yorkers did a better job than Floridians, because I believe New Yorkers had better advice, and they followed that advice, the mask, social distancing, et cetera. I don't believe either of them, because they're both for political purposes. Long answer to a short question, but important. But most important, forget the politics and all of this junk. Why are we not learning and designing an emergency public health system? Somebody lands today at JFK Airport, and they're sick, and there's a 911 call, and they say, this person has some kind of infectious disease. We don't know what it is. We are right back where we were the first day of COVID. Right back where we were. Who's going to test? Where is the laboratory capacity? Where's the PPE? Where are the masks? Right back where we were. And that, my friends, is incompetent government. Okay, enough with that, but it gets me fired up. Let's go to the next question. In the new debt ceiling agreement, there are stricter requirements for people receiving food stamps. What does this entail, and why was it such a contentious issue? The debt ceiling agreement is in place conceptually. There's one little technicality called they have to actually pass it now. But I believe it passes. what percentage? I would say 70-30 that it passes. But it's interesting because it's really the first time you see the dynamic that is developing with this new House and how it may operate. This agreement has to get past something called the Rules Committee. On the Rules Committee, there are some rabid conservatives that McCarthy had to put on that committee as part of making his deal to become Speaker. And they are rattling their sabers and saying the deal doesn't do enough. Why? Because this debt ceiling agreement is a point of leverage, and the conservatives were hoping that they could use it to leverage Biden and reduce government spending or threaten a default under the debt ceiling. And the rabid conservatives on the Rules Committee say that McCarthy didn't get enough from Biden, didn't do enough to control spending, didn't do enough to reduce the debt. So they're threatening not to vote for it on the Rules Committee. My guess is it gets through the Rules Committee and then it goes to the floor. But what you're going to see with this bill is that it is going to pass because Democrats and Republicans will join forces to support it. In other words, the big question was if McCarthy always needed to pass things with Republican votes, he couldn't, because he has that coalition of rabid conservatives who are beyond rational. So he could be in a situation where he just couldn't pass. What you're now seeing is McCarthy is going to pass things with Democrats. This is going to be interesting to watch because it should be anathema to the rabid conservatives who made all these promises and extorted McCarthy to become Speaker. Now McCarthy turns around and he passes things with Democrats. How do the rabid conservatives allow that? Plus, they put in all those provisions that said we can recall McCarthy if one person calls for a recall vote. So it's a amazing flip-flop for these rabid conservatives who made a mockery out of the House, holding up McCarthy to become Speaker, all those votes. But now they're going to pass things by working with Democrats. It just shows how irrational they are and how emotional they are. Because you can't justify the two positions. You can't justify we're rabid conservatives, we're going to uphold McCarthy as Speaker, he's going to do it our way or no way because I made a commitment to my people back home. That was position one. Position two is, or we'll pass things with Democrats and moderate our concerns so Democrats can actually vote for them. Again, it just shows the political flip-flop and the obvious political nature of what's going on. On the debt ceiling also what you had was the axe was hanging over everyone's head. If they played games with the debt ceiling, that could trigger significant financial fallout. And you could see that stock market drop, and you could see those 401ks drop. And then it would be a pox on all your houses, and especially on your house, Speaker McCarthy. So I think that was also part of what was going on. But otherwise, it's a moderate bill on every level. I think President Biden gets to say, look, I can work with Republicans. I think McCarthy gets to say, look, I'm not as crazy as you thought I was. And most importantly, we get to go on without defaulting on the economy. But again, they still have to take that vote. And with McCarthy's group, it's not over until it's over. Let's go to the next question. Hello, Governor. I read a recent CNN poll that said 68% of Republicans would be happy with Ron DeSantis as the nominee and that 76% would be happy with Trump. With all the negativity that is attached to Trump, why do you think the majority of Republicans are unwilling to ditch him? Great question. And great political moment, and a telling political moment. Almost every American institution condemns Donald Trump, and a majority of the Republicans like him more. That's the cynicism they have about the American institutions. Donald Trump gets indicted, his numbers go up. Accuse him of a crime, his numbers go up. We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. This is the most frightening fact of the degradation of our democracy. 76% of Americans believe Alvin Bragg, who's the Manhattan DA, indicted Donald Trump and that he was, quote unquote, politically influenced. 76% say an indictment was politically influenced. A majority of Democrats say Bragg was politically influenced. And it's not a condemnation of Bragg. Nobody's saying Bragg is a political hack. Nobody even knows who Bragg is. They're saying that's the system. The system is political. So Mar-a-Lago, stealing documents, Democrats are going after Trump because of politics. The New York Attorney General, she's a political hack, and she's going after Trump for politics. Manhattan DA, political hack. It is their disrespect for the American government that allows them to say the more the American government and establishment condemns Trump, the more we want him. That's what they're saying. And that is really a damning condemnation, especially when it's the justice system. Look, let's be honest. It's one thing when you say, I think the federal government Department of Environment stinks. Okay. I think the Department of Housing stinks. Okay. I think the military is wasteful. Okay. I think that the Congress people are all full of beans. Yeah, all right, they're politicians. But when you say, I think the American justice system, where we put people into jail, I think that is now a political tool. I think Biden manipulates the Attorney General of the United States to do his political bidding. That is a damning condemnation, and a frightening one, But that's what they're saying. And that's why I think Trump has gone up. I also think Ron DeSantis has had a terrible performance. Ron DeSantis was supposed to be, 2 months ago, he was the next best thing, right? Nobody wanted Trump. Everybody wants Ron DeSantis. What happened since? Trump gets indicted 57 times, and now nobody wants Ron DeSantis, who's had a very lackluster couple of months. Also with Ron DeSantis, forget what the polls say, and politically, he's proven himself inept. You listen to what DeSantis says. He is a frightening, rabid conservative, right? We just talked about what he did during COVID. The fight he's taking on with Mickey Mouse, and Mickey Mouse is beating Ron DeSantis. This is a truly frightening, rabid conservative, out of touch with mainstream America. and out of touch, I believe, with mainstream Republicans. He's a frightening figure. For those people who say Trump is frightening, and he is, DeSantis, in his own way, is more frightening. Because Trump, I believe, it's theater. It's theater. He's an actor. He's on TV. DeSantis actually believes it. He's a zealot and rabid about it. And I think he's actually more frightening than Donald Trump. Let's go to the next question. Dear Governor Cuomo, there were a slew of shootings in Chicago over the holiday weekend, and as I read through each story, I noticed that in every case, no arrests were made. How is that possible? Is this an issue of Chicago needing to increase police presence or the sheer volume of crimes, or both? Guns. I've spoken a lot about guns. I've worked on it for over 20 years. I'm continuing to work on it. I can't speak to why arrests were made or weren't made, or how the investigation is being conducted. I'm sure Chicago's doing everything they can. On the issue of guns, nothing is going to change until this nation decides it has to change. There are some times in life, there are some issues in life that are hard, that until you wake up one morning and you say, enough is enough, I've hit bottom, I can't take it anymore, I'm willing to go through the pain of change, nothing's going to happen. And that's where we are with guns. This nation's going to have to wake up one morning and say, that's it, enough is enough. I will go through the pain of change. And you can say, well, when is that going to be? How many school children, how many school shootings does it take? I don't know. But I know with everything that has gone on, and even though a majority of Americans support sensible gun control, a majority of Republicans, a majority of Democrats, ban assault weapon, a majority of Americans, that loud minority runs the show. That loud minority scares the Republicans. And by the way, don't kid yourself, it scares the Democrats. And until that silent majority wakes up and says, I'm getting in the game, this is lunacy, and I mean it, and I'm really going to engage, nothing's going to change. And I'm going to do my best to wake up that silent majority. But we're not there yet. Next question. Governor Cuomo, I'm just curious, this past Memorial Day weekend, what did you do? Different question. But this past Memorial Day weekend was a different one for me. A great colleague of mine who I worked with in the state government, who was with me in the Attorney General's office and then in the governor's office. So we worked together for about 16 years. Passed away. Beautiful woman inside and out. Letizia Tagliaferro. Letizia Tagliaferro. Great Italian name. And she was a great lawyer. She worked in the district attorney's office, then the AG's office. She was inspector general for the state of New York. 50 years old, passed away of cancer. And it was crushing. And it's one of those situations where you're searching for a rationale, right? Why God? Why this person? Because you could not find a more genuine, sweeter, kinder, community-minded person than Letizia. So that was a wake and a funeral, and that sort of put a damper on the entire weekend, because that was very painful for me and all of us who worked with Letizia for so long. Had my daughter, Cara, who came, and we spent some time and we had some fun. And then I did a little get ready for summer. I have a little get ready for summer routine. So I did some work around the house. I did some work in the garage. I have the motorcycle ready. It is looking good. It is tuned up. It is running fine. I did that. I have all the fishing gear ready. So I'm ready for that. So I tinkered a little bit, and that actually was therapeutic for me, I think, to help me get through the weekend. But it wasn't the typical Memorial Day weekend, and I wish it was. Let's go to the next question. Governor Cuomo, what is going on with the migrant situation? Does it ever end? Good question. The migrant situation is the most difficult issue this nation has had to deal with since COVID. And it is doing a very poor job. First of all, no one is in charge, right? Federal government is doing this, state government is doing that, city governments. There's no coordinated plan. And as usual, the government, the political system, has underestimated what we're dealing with. We have to find short-term housing, short-term accommodations. So we're spending billions of dollars, motels, hotels, maybe school gymnasiums, maybe college dormitory. Why? Because the mindset is this is a short-term problem. There's only one issue with that thinking. This is not a short-term problem. All the billions you're spending, all the plans you're making, for naught. These migrants are not here for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. They're not going back. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be here until they have their asylum hearing. There is a backlog now of 1.6 million asylum hearings that have to be conducted. 1.6 million. Think about that. The estimates for how long that is going to take, 2 to 3 years. 2 to 3 years. So the migrants, motels, hotels, school gymnasiums, 2 to 3 years. And these are families. These are children. You're not going to keep them in a motel for 2 to 3 years. No, we have no idea what we're dealing with. You're going to need a competent government response, and you're going to need strong leadership. It has to start with the federal government. Why? Because the federal government does immigration. That's their job. You know, there's a job description, municipal government, state government, federal government. Federal government, immigration. That's their responsibility. They created this issue at the border. Manage it. How would they manage it? Look at their own federal resources, find accommodations, work with states, find accommodations. What they've done is they've abrogated everything to the cities that happen to be the recipient of the migrants being sent from the southern states for political purposes. The cities are the last place that should be responsible for dealing with this problem. First of all, because the cities are in real desperate trouble themselves. We're in the middle of an urban crisis, even though we don't want to recognize it. Cities are being depopulated. homelessness, crime, mental health. What else do you want to throw at the cities? Then the cities have high taxes. Then many of the cities in the northern part of the country, I can move south and have better weather. And now we're going to say you're supposed to be responsible for the migrants also. It's laughable. It's ludicrous. It's indefensible. It's constitutionally repugnant. And the state government, they don't want to touch it. Why? Because it's NIMBY on steroids. They don't want to be responsible for migrants because communities are turning their back. So this is going to be a long-term problem. Again, think about that. 1.6 million backlog cases, 2 to 3 years to hear the cases. And after you hear the cases, some migrants will be granted permanent residence, right? But 2 to 3 years, and your answer is a hotel, motel at billions of dollars per year? Come on. Next question. Governor Cuomo, there is a bill in your state, the state of New York, that would stop charities from funding groups that help Israeli settlements. Do you have any thoughts? Yes. And this is an effort that I'm working on. I'm starting a group called Progressives for Israel. I am very worried about the situation that Israel is in vis-a-vis the American people, not necessarily vis-a-vis the American government, but vis-a-vis the American people. Americans, more and more, are opposing the state of Israel. Democrats, primarily, are moving to a negative place vis-a-vis Israel, most related to the Palestinian conflict. I'm a Democrat in New York. At one time, 80% of the Democrats, 90% of the Democrats supported Israel, right? You're a New Yorker. You grow up with the Jewish community. 2 of my brothers-in-law are Jewish, right? It was just total connection with the community. But it's gotten to a point where the majority of the Democrats probably will side with Palestine against Israel now. And you read stories about apartheid government of Israel, the human rights violations, etc. And I believe that negativity and even anti-Semitism is being fanned by a concerted effort of groups that are legitimately anti-Israel or pro-Palestinian. But I think they are strategically and purposefully increasing the negativity towards Israel. You know, politics, there can be multiple agendas and there can be secret agendas. I start a group, I'm against electric cars. New Yorkers against electric vehicles because we don't think there's enough electricity to satisfy all the EV use. So New Yorkers against electric vehicles. What you don't know is I am also in the gasoline business. I sell gasoline. I own gasoline stations. So New Yorkers against electric vehicles. Yes, but you're in the gasoline business. So this bill, don't fund charities that help Israeli settlements because they are really prosecuting Palestinians. I think these are efforts that in whole or in part, are designed to just foment the negativity towards Israel. And I think many bona fide groups don't understand the peril that Israel is in. For example, you have a lot of groups in New York, a lot of Jewish people in New York, Jewish people, who are angry at Israel. They are angry at Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. They are angry at the judicial reforms that he tried to pass. They are angry at the coalition government that he has put together. They are angry that he is too hostile towards the Palestinian issue. They are legitimately angry. I believe that. But I believe they are inadvertently fanning the flames of negativity in this country, possibly anti-Semitism, and endangering the existence of the state of Israel. The state of Israel literally is fighting for its survival as a state. And these groups that have legitimate concerns with Bibi and with the judiciary, and by the way, I agree with them. I'm against the judicial reforms that were proposed. But start with an opening sentence that says, I support the state of Israel's existence. I support the state of Israel's existence. I oppose anti-Semitism. And now let me talk about the judiciary. I support the state of Israel's existence. I oppose anti-Semitism. And now I want to talk about the coalition government that Bibi Netanyahu put together because I'm opposed to it. Fine. But don't erode the support for the existence of the state of Israel. And that's what they are doing. Because all people hear is the criticism. Even the Jewish people are upset with Israel. Oh, well then I shouldn't support Israel either. Distinguish support for the state of Israel versus the complaints about the Israeli government, judicial reform, etc. Think of it this way. We have Donald Trump as president. At one time, obviously. Donald Trump puts children in cages, and that picture goes worldwide. Okay. How many people worldwide saw children in cages at the southern border and said, that is reprehensible, what the American government is doing? That's a very fair position. A lot of Americans held that position. But that doesn't justify that person being anti-American. Be anti-Trump, be anti-immigration policy of the Americans, but not America should no longer exist. That's what's happening with Israel. Be anti-judicial reform, be anti-prime minister, be anti-coalition government, but don't be anti-Israel and don't be anti-Semitic. And recognize the existence of the state of Israel, both for the state of Israel's sake and our own. Our own. Israel is our best ally in the Middle East, period. Israel is a democracy. Well, it's not a perfect democracy. Look in the mirror. So, support the state of Israel, but God bless you, have your own criticism. But what we're doing is we're eroding inadvertently the support for the existence of the state of Israel. And that, my friends, is a cause for concern for all of us. That wraps it up for today. Thank you very, very much for joining me for another week. I hope you have a good one. I hope the weather is as good where you are as it is where we are here in New York, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Thank you.